Right, joining us live now is Dr. Isaac Bogosh, infectious diseases specialist at Toronto General Hospital. Dr. Bogosh, thanks for joining us on this Easter Monday. Hope you had a good weekend. Let's get into it. So some health experts in Quebec are urging action due to the hospitalizations rising there. The flu and COVID-19 are sending more people to hospitals at a time when staffing shortages are also happening. Do you think that this is a cautionary tale for us here in Ontario?
Well, yeah, I think obviously we can never ignore what's happening next door and elsewhere in Canada, and of course elsewhere in the world. We've got to really keep our eyes open and look at how other jurisdictions, other countries are dealing with their BA2 wave. But obviously we can't make direct comparisons, and certainly we can learn from a lot of these areas. But Ontario does have a bit of a unique situation, just as every other country or region has its own unique situation. Now, of course, BA2 is causing a wave in Ontario. We know that. We're in the midst of one. If we look at our wastewater surveillance, it shows very early signs that it's either plateauing or going down in many parts of the province. That's obviously a very positive sign. You still want to see that trend continue before you get confident that we're working our way out of this wave. Hospitalizations are still, pretty, they've risen pretty significantly since a few weeks ago, but they're nowhere near what we were at in January and February of this year. But I think we would expect those hospitalizations to either plateau or continue to rise, at least for the next week or so, if the wastewater surveillance continues to decline, because we know hospitalizations are what we call a lagging indicator. But yeah, of course, I think we always have to be careful. You can't have a ton of confidence in the COVID era about how things are going, but at least there's some very early signals that things are starting to improve in Ontario, and that's obviously good news.
Yeah, here's hoping that we stay on that trajectory. All right, Dr. Bogosh, we're hearing more about the XE subvariant. What is it and what do we know about it so far?
Yeah, not a lot. So the XE subvariant is basically what happens when someone gets infected with Omicron. Remember, Omicron has a lot of different sublineages of we'll call them sublineages of virus within it. And so someone could get a BA1 infection and a BA2 infection simultaneously, and the word is recombinant. So it's basically like those BA1 and BA2 sublineages were married, had a child, and it's XE. That's the best way I can explain it. I'm sure there's a better way to explain it, but it's basically a combination of BA1 and BA2. We don't know a ton about it. Based on early evidence, it looks like this might be a little bit more transmissible than BA2, for example, maybe about 10% more transmissible, but I think it's still very early. And just another reason, I think if we take a step back and look at the 30,000-foot view, what's happening? We know that there's more mutations happening. We know that the virus is continuing to change. We know we're going to have very good surveillance to keep ahead of what's happening. There's not only XE, there's other variants and subvariants that are emerging overseas that we have to keep an eye on. And the key thing here to watch out for is it more transmissible? Does it evade the immune system and protection we get from vaccination or recovery from infection? Will our treatments work as well on these sublineages and new variants? And so do the treatments and do the diagnostic tests work as well? There's a lot to learn about this, and we don't really have all the answers at this point in time. However, I know it's a bit of speculation, but based on early shreds of evidence, it looks like it causes a very similar clinical picture. It looks like the vaccines work as well. That's early. It looks like it's just a bit more transmissible by estimate of 10%. Okay,
so just to recap, the XE subvariant is basically the love child of BA1 and BA2. Okay.
That's a good way of putting it.
All right. Okay, Dr. Bogosh, let's get to our viewer questions this morning. First one coming from our viewer, Joe, who wants to know, if two people in the same household tested positive 2 days apart, should they quarantine from each other?
No. I mean, if you're both positive, you're both positive. What are you going to do? Infect the other person? You're already infected. So, hopefully those individuals recover quickly. We know in the vast majority of cases, this will recover rather quickly. People will improve, and there's no need to isolate from one another in the same house if you're all infected.
Okay. Clear answer there. Dr. Bogosh, we've had a few questions about case rates among the vaccinated, including those who are in hospital. So our viewer Sue is asking, why are so many well-vaccinated people still contracting COVID-19?
Okay, Sue, great point. Remember, the vaccines will certainly do a great job in protecting individuals from having more severe infections. So it's good in preventing hospitalizations, ICU admissions, and deaths. 3 doses of a vaccine can reduce your risk of getting this infection. It's just that reduction in risk of getting the infection is not as good as it was compared to past variants. So many people out there know somebody who's had 3 doses of a vaccine who's gotten COVID. It's not uncommon for that to happen. Your risk is a little bit lower, but it's certainly not as low as it was for past infections. But the kicker, and I know I sound like a broken record, but it's really important, is that those 3 doses really prevent people from having more severe illness, and they do a wonderful job keeping people out of hospital.
All right. Dr. Bogosh, next question comes from Agnes, who wants to clear up some information floating around out there, asking, when someone gets COVID, any strand, is it factual that they are immune from contracting it for 2 to 3 months or infecting others?
So yes, but, and there's a huge but, right? If you had a prior variant, like a prior infection, either the original strain of COVID, is called the ancestral strain, or the Alpha variant, which we had this time last year, or the Delta variant, which we had in the in the fall of 2021, you can get an Omicron infection. And the whole point of Omicron is that it really evades that immunity, that protection that you get from recovery from infection. However, if someone had a recent Omicron infection, probably with a BA.1 strain, for example, in January or February of this year, it's very unlikely, not impossible, but very unlikely that you'll get another Omicron infection within, about a 3-month period of time. And the data for that comes from, there's some really good data from Denmark looking at Omicron infection and then Omicron reinfection. Even if it's BA.1 initial infection and BA.2, it appears that while it can happen, it is very rare. So you will have some degree of protection if you've had a recent infection with Omicron, for example, in January and February of this year, based on some very good data we've seen from Europe.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. Dr. Bogosh, that's our time this morning. Once again, thanks for joining us. We'll chat with you soon.